welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, I welcome you from the bottom of my heart. And if you are not subscribed yet, please make sure you press the red button and subscribe to my channel. That would be amazing. I really would appreciate your support. Last time I did a video that was very true to my heart and to my senses. And I got some very positive feedback. Thank you so much to everybody that reached out to me. And I plan to do some more things related to discrimination and the whole perception that we're having of the world lately. So stay tuned for that. You can follow me at my Instagram, and there I will be sharing more content. I wouldn't say on a daily basis, but more often than I do right now. So you are here because you saw the title. Yes, I used to be a crew member of cruise ships. I worked originally in the shops, and that was my entire career for the whole 7 years I was on board. Now, when we say 7 years, of course, you're talking about the whole period. And one thing a lot of people don't understand when you work on a ship, especially guests, they will always reach out to you and say, oh, so you go home after this cruise. No, we usually do a contract that would be anywhere between 4 months and 11 months, depending on your position. Guests usually come on board from anywhere to 4 to 16 days, and we will occasionally, once again, depending on the cruise line, have guests that will stay for more than 2 months at a time. This could be entrepreneurs, but mostly they are retired American passengers, because for them, believe me or not, it's much cheaper to stay on board than at a retirement home back in America. So there's lots of small things that are really interesting when you're a crew member. And when I've been searching on YouTube to get some inspiration for my video, I couldn't really find a lot of information about the stories or the perspective. I could definitely find people sharing how was their beginning of contract, how was their cabin life, and those were mostly entertainers. Now, when we speak entertainers, we're talking about everybody that is involved, of course, in the entertainment. So musicians, singers, dancers. I wouldn't say an excellent life on board, but compared to all the other departments, they do have a lot more free time, of course. We're not talking about the issues that come with dancing on a boat that is rocking and there's pretty much no one around to see your performance that evening. But definitely the physical toll is much less than most of the other crew members would face. Working on board a cruise ship is quite an adventure, I have to be honest, because the moment you sign in, you already get the perspective of how this entire experience for however long you're going to remain on board is going to be. Usually you fly so many hours, then you have to go through customs, you have to get from the airport to the port and wait a couple of hours until you have all your things loaded in. And then you will have, usually you go directly to the crew purser, you will have all your documents, you have your passport taken, so that's one thing. We never carry our passport with us. We actually have an ID made by the ship. And with that ID is what you usually carry around unless you have a driver's license, but that is not really covered. So it can be quite tricky sometimes if you're trying to get somewhere on your free time when you are on port. However, it is what it is. They have to retain our passports because of customs. Otherwise, everyone will start leaving the ship. So you sign in, you leave all your documents, you usually have a very quick emergency drill or an introduction by the safety officer on board. You will rarely get a chance to actually eat that much or take a shower. You have to do one or the other. And then you will have to go to your cabin because depending on the time, it's almost 3 o'clock. Most of the drills are done around 3 o'clock because on turnaround days, so the day where we load in all the new passengers, you will have an emergency drill for the newcomers. So you yourself have not much clue what to do. You just know that you have to put on your green, beautiful cap. You have to put in on your safety vest and go to your station. So imagine all of this happening in a few hours, and this is your first experience on board. It is quite overwhelming. So to overcome this, of course, after the drill, you go change. You usually have to have dinner depending on your shift and go to work. So there is, yeah, I mean, everyone, like I said, depending on your department, everyone will have different experiences. But usually for me working on the shop, especially when I went to become a shop manager, we would have way less time to do the whole handover and know where all the paperwork is, get the keys, go to your room, figure out where the shop is, where's all the stock. So this is how you step into the life of being a crew member. Of course, you know, with time you get to know many people, and this is one of the crazy things about working on a cruise ship. My first one had about 1,000 crew members, and we were doing South America. I'm from Brazil. So there were a lot of Brazilians, a lot of Mexicans, but you have people from all over the world. Later on, when I changed from companies, because the shop, we are actually third partners, so we are hired by a different company and we can go to many cruise lines. In these 7 years, I've done 4 different cruise lines and 11 different ships. When I started with this company, the biggest ship I worked in was Celebrity Equinox was my first ship, and they had 1,300 crew members and 87 different nationalities. I mean, that for me was already such a shock. It's unbelievable because for me, I barely had good English. I could pass by, you know, like introduce myself and try to sell things to people, but I couldn't really have deep conversations with people. So it was a lot of times, you know, just trying to interact. And after you work for some time on the ship, you will always get the same questions from clients. And every nationality dealt different with different issues, but as a crew member, every single one of us would hear, "So, do you go home to sleep?" You are in the middle of the Atlantic for 14 days, and people are asking you if you go home after your shift is over. Or they would ask, "Why is the internet so slow?" I mean, ma'am, I apologize, but there is no fiber optical cable that can go through the sea and be constantly connected to the ship. Internet on board is crazy expensive. And for guests, it's more expensive than for us, but still, when it takes you, it took me once about 20 minutes to load my Facebook page and 15 minutes just to open my email. Can you imagine that happening? So for me, it was much easier just to call home and let them know that I was doing fine. And this is one other thing that crew members will be doing all the time. You dock, you run to the nearest place to get free Wi-Fi. Free Wi-Fi is a must have when you are a crew member, because no one can afford to be constantly connecting and checking if everything is fine, or just looking at memes and watching streamings. So this is where things start to become a little strange, because the more time you spend on board, the less you know about pop culture, the less you know about the memes and everything that is happening around the world. So you really become a family when you are on board. Crew members are talking about who did you know from previous contract from this cruise line, so you're finding out you worked in the same ship but in different contracts. So you start creating bonds with these people. And those bonds are not like the bonds that we create here on the real world. Our bonds are so much stronger. Sometimes you have a friendship that you think nothing can break it, until you sign off and you find out that you're two completely different people, but you had a couple of things in common that just sealed that off, because you were far away from everything and everyone. You are taken away from the world as it is, and you are put into this bubble in which you will live for several months and constantly dealing with complaints and long working hours. I actually had days of 16 hours of work, and that was intense. So when you go on board, you have to be open-minded and prepared to whatever is going to happen. Being on a cruise ship, which has so many nationalities and not really having a very strong dominance of the English language, you're bound to make mistakes and you're bound to be lost in translation. One of the things that I remember clearly was when I went to my assistant manager and she said, Flavia, could you get me a bin liner? And she's British. And I was thinking in my head, what is a bin liner? What is a bin liner? So I started thinking, bin, what is bin? I don't know what is bin, liner. Liner is a line. So I automatically assumed she needed a ruler. And I brought her the biggest ruler I could find. And she just looked at me and said, you don't know what a bin liner is, do you? I was like, no. So she just told me it's those plastic bags that come in a row. It's a bin liner. To this day, I'm still trying to find what makes it called a bin liner. So if you know, drop down in the comments. That would be amazing. But this was one of the things that happened so constantly that being lost in translations sometimes is very intimidating. But I think, you have to take everything with a little grain of salt and just admit that it's a learning curve for you. Another time that I was majorly lost in translation was when I went from sales assistant to a jeweler, which was in the same company as I was working with this lady. I was working in the jewelry store, and every certain period of the cruise, usually if it's a long cruise, mid-cruise, we have special promotions, so we bring out different items. And we had this really nice young couple that came over, and they were looking for an engagement ring. So I walked around and I was showing them the different options. And I noticed that he had a tattoo coming out of his sleeve. He had short sleeves on. Curious the way I am, because I love tattoos. I have quite a few now, but back on those days, I didn't have that many. So I just asked him, I said, wow, that's a tattoo, right? What do you have? And he said to me, oh, it's a saxophone. And I said, wow, that's amazing. I mean, you're a musician, right? He said, yeah, of course. I know I'm going to be sharing this on the internet and it's just going to be recorded forever. But this was unbelievably and terribly embarrassing for me. I just turned to him and said, wow, I wish I was that good with using my fingers and blowing. How is it that someone can come up with this stuff? I don't know, but I did it. And it was a fiasco, of course. They were embarrassed. I was embarrassed. I realized far too late, because it took me a few moments, maybe 10 seconds, I don't know, because I noticed a reaction, and then I look around and everyone is quiet. Everyone is looking at me and I'm wondering, what did I do? Oh my God, what did I just say? So certainly the things that will happen that will make you question, oh my God, what am I doing here? But everything is kind of balanced by the crew bar. The crew bar is a place where everybody will let some steam off. So at the end of your shift, sometimes you're working from 8:30 in the morning until 11 in the evening with just 2 breaks in between for lunch and for dinner. And you are exhausted, and the same thing is coming again on the next day. So instead of going to bed and resting and relaxing, under the sea level with no windows, with no fresh air, you go to the crew bar instead. Just to think of those memories and all the crazy parties you have, themed parties like for Indian independence, Filipino independence, which were which are majority of the crew members depending on the cruise line, you will have this celebration. So you get to see the other culture, you get to listen to their music, you get to see what it's all about, you hear them talking their languages. So for me, that was truly eye-opening. I mean, nothing is perfect. Of course, there was a lot of discrimination against people from all nationalities, one discriminating against the other, but I will talk about this on a different video because this one is all crazy stories and things that I can't remember right now. So when you are on port, you have a time that you arrive and a time that you will leave. And in between these times, you have a time frame where everyone should be on board, and crew members are usually expected to be on board before the guests. But I think I speak from heart. If you were a crew member, you probably nearly missed your deadline at least once in your contract. It's truly impossible, especially if you're having a great time and it was, you know, with people that you like, or you just found this amazing location and you can't wait to explore it. Or if you go on a tour and something happens and the car breaks down. So there are several things that could cause you to be delayed. But most of the times, that will not really make a difference for the officers on board. You gotta be back in time. It is your responsibility. Back on those days, you could very well lose your contract if you were late. And if you completely missed the ship, you missed the contract. I don't know how it is nowadays, so if you're still working on board, let me know. But definitely you have to make your way to the next port of call because you need to retrieve all your documents, you need to retrieve your personal belongings, and then you have to, if probably still the same, you still have to pay your ticket back home. So it's a lot of responsibility, and the consequences are even bigger. But it happened to me in Greece a couple of times. In Mykonos, we went to the Paradise Beach. We were leaving late at night that day, around 12, if I'm not mistaken. And we went to Paradise Beach. We enjoyed some cocktails. It was a nice, beautiful evening. And on the way back, we realized that there were no cabs. And no cabs were going to that direction, or if they were going to take 30 to 40 minutes to arrive, and we start to freak out. We missed the bus, so it was my first contract. I don't fully remember. I know that we managed to get transportation back to town. So we arrived in the middle of town and we had to run to get the shuttle bus back to the ship, which was the last one leaving. We took our shoes off. We were losing stuff on the way. We were so nervous. Can you imagine? It's your first contract. You just had an amazing time at Paradise Beach in Mykonos, and then you lose the ship. That was nerve-wracking. I feel nervous just remembering it. But eventually we managed, because there were a couple of guests that were late as well. So the shuttle bus was still waiting for the two guests, and we arrived just before them. So we make it back to the ship. Of course, the officers were waiting in the gangway, and then we got a big preaching, but because there were some connections with one of the people, this is another thing that happens on the ship as well. You make connections. Yeah, it's just like out here, but in a much smaller scale. I was late also in Katakolo. Katakolo, it's another Greek city. I don't know what it is with Greece, but usually most of my stories being delayed to the ship were happening in Greece. Fun time, I guess. We were in Katakolo, and close to this city, it's a very small port. Close to it, they have the Olympia site, the ancient Greek Olympia. And everyone was going over there, so we joined this group and we were going to rent a scooter. So my friend said, oh, no problem, you know, we rent a 2-people scooter, you go on the back with me, because I don't drive. To this day, I don't have a driver's license. So, yep, I am not a big fan of driving. We got there a little after everybody else, and all the 2-person scooters were taken. So I am thinking, no, I shouldn't do this. I'm not going to go. it's okay, I'll just go next time. And she pursued me to rent a scooter. She said, no, it's super easy, you will learn in 2 minutes. So I decided to rent the scooter, and we were following this group, but of course I was still like getting the hang of it. I was going maybe around 20 kilometers per hour and trying to keep up with the group, but they were experienced, so they started going 40-50 kilometers once we left town, and that was terrifying because I had to try and catch up with them. And there was a very sharp curve. Just before we reached it, we saw maybe 4 or 5 scooters down on the floor. People were going too fast and they crashed. And luckily for them, there was a barrier because that was a cliff. So upon seeing that, of course, I was already terrified. I'm thinking, oh my God, I think we should just turn around. And she's like, no, we can still see a part of the group over there. So we kept on going. But of course, I was getting comfortable, and then I see this scene. I am not comfortable anymore, so I start going slower. And by going slower, we missed the entire group. We didn't have a map. We had cell phones with no local SIM card, no roaming. And, well, it's a small city in Greece. Most of the plaques are only in Greek outside of town. Inside town, you still find translated ones, but outside, no. We stopped at a gas station. I tried to ask them, but they didn't understand English. So we just kept on going, and we kept on going. And I have no idea how long we were on that godforsaken scooter. And I just told her, let's stop and reorientate ourselves. Because I remember seeing in the map, Tripoli, the name of the city, Tripoli. And I saw a plaque with Tripoli, and I was like, oh no, we're not going in the right direction. So we stop, we look around, and we see Olympia on the exact opposite direction. And we didn't have much time at this point. I think we left just after lunch, so we had to be back around 4 o'clock or something like that. And with all this stopping and trying to reorient ourselves, we were going to be late, and we didn't know where to go back to. We were on the highway, but the roads were fairly small. There wasn't many barriers against, falling down the cliff. And there were super heavy trucks going through that highway. Now imagine, I don't drive. It was my first experience. And to be honest, at this point, I'm probably going 45 kilometers an hour. So I'm a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more confident with myself. I'm just freaking out because she's like making selfies while driving, and I was just going crazy because I've always been a super responsible person. That doesn't mean I am responsible, but I tried in the best of circumstances. So seeing that, then my brain is going, oh my God, this is it. And this Mykonos story had already happened. So I'm thinking, oh, this is it. This is finally the time that I am going to be late and we are going to lose our job. But I saw a bus that had an inscription with the cruise line we worked for, and it was a tour bus. So I said, this bus is going back to the ship. We have to follow it. At this point, I am doing the maximum speed on that scooter, which I think it was 70 kilometers per hour. And I'm just rushing, just going after that bus. And we kept on going, we kept on going, we kept on going. At one point, we lost it because it was much faster than us. And it was, when you blank and there's nothing going on in your head anymore, that's what happened to me. I was just like, oh my God, this is it. And then I see it. Our home away from home, just over there. And I almost let go of the handles. I was so relieved. It was such a long, deep breath. And I was just like, okay, we're fine. So we start going a little slower. And I asked her to check the time. And we had about 15 minutes to still get down there, pay for the scooters, take our documents, and run. And it's quite a long platform from where we were. So we start rushing again. We're rushing and we get there and we're just like, how much is it? I'm sorry, we don't have time to really do everything. Here you go, here's your money, give us our IDs. And we ran and we ran and we ran and we ran. And they were already waiting for us at the gangway. So another ear pulled, another conversation, and from that point onwards, I was only late once again in Prince Edward Island. Oh, the worst possible situation because it was tender. When the ship cannot dock, you have to anchor, so you have to tender the guests and the crew members, and our last crew tender was already gone. But I'll save that for next time. If you have any suggestions, any ideas, anything that you would like to know about my experience, please let me know in the comments, or if you go follow me on Instagram, you can also send me a DM, or during the stories you can share things with me, you can tag me, and that would be awesome because I'm trying to create a platform where I can talk about my previous experiences, about things that are happening lately, and how to become a little bit more integrated with the world, with our feelings as well. I think it's important to look at the past and see the things that you have learned, but also implement the things that you are learning now to improve your future. And with this, I'm just gonna say, if you enjoyed this video, press the like button, subscribe, that would be amazing, and stay safe. See you next time.